We're less than 15 minutes away from President Obama's annual State of the Union address. For more on what we can expect, we're joined live by Doris Kearns Goodwin in the U.S. state of Florida. She is a noted historian and Pulitzer Prize-winning biographer of American presidents. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome.
What are you looking forward to the most in this speech? We understand he'll talk about the middle class quite a bit, but what are you hoping he talks about?
I'm sure he will talk about the recovery of the economy and the fact that there's fastest job growth since the 1990s, more people waking up feeling good about the purpose in their lives because they have a job and can pay bills. But I think he's going to pivot from that to talk about now we have to worry about the inequality of income, the lack of mobility, all the things he's been talking about before, but they have a special meaning now with the recovery providing a certain wind on his back.
You are a presidential historian. How do you think Mr. Obama compares to other U.S. presidents when it comes to his State of the Union addresses? Are they just average, or do you think that there's anything particular that has stood out or has been memorable in recent years?
Well, I think the interesting thing about the current situation we're in right now is that State of the Unions don't have the same oomph that they used to in the old days when there was just 3 networks and everybody gathered around and it really was a common conversation. And I think that's one of the reasons tonight, as I gather, that President Obama has already leaked a lot of what the State of the Union message is going to be. It's almost as if he realizes you can't have a one-night stand anymore. You need a courtship that goes over a period of time. So he's already talked about community colleges. He's already talked about tax reform. He's already talked about middle-class tax breaks. And there may still be some surprises here, but I think more importantly, he just wants to repeat, simplify, and get his message across.
We're taking a live look now at the Capitol just before this address gets underway. House Speaker John Boehner addressing Congress. You know, throughout the history, you've mentioned that the State of the Union speech has changed, and in recent decades, it seems like it's become more of a presidential wish list. How would you characterize it?
No, I think that's right. I mean, you think of earlier days when there were really policy arguments that were presented that then became something rather than just a wish list. When Franklin Roosevelt talked about Lend-Lease in 1941, Lend-Lease passed within months after that. When Lyndon Johnson talked about an unconditional war on poverty, poverty and Medicare and the Great Society passed. And usually the definition of a good State of the Union is not just pretty words, but whether the words get translated into action. But we've seen such gridlock in America for so long right now that in some ways these States of the Union, especially I think maybe now for President Obama, represent a thought for the 2016 campaign and a thought for his legacy, the things he wants to be remembered for, knowing the reality of the chances of getting a lot through Congress are almost nil.
Well, that leads me to my next question. As you mentioned, he is in his 6th year and nearing the end of his second term. He's also speaking to an unfriendly Republican majority crowd. Do you expect a more defiant tone or, as you mentioned, a momentum builder for whoever runs from his party in 2016?
I think the most important thing for him to do is to exert his leadership tonight. I mean, he started to do it after the devastating loss in the Congress in November by the executive orders, by the deal that he's made with Cuba, by talking about immigration, and his public approval rating has gone up because there was such a vacuum in leadership anywhere in Washington. So I think tonight what he mostly has to accomplish, even more than the substantive talk that he gives, is the tone that says, I'm still here, I've got 2 more years, the presidency has a lot of power. I have power as executive orders, I have the power of the veto, I have the power of the bully pulpit, and I'm going to exercise those until my last minute of the last day in the office, because otherwise it's so easy for everyone's attention to already turn to this ridiculous, endless campaign that we're already in the 2016 campaign, and it's still far away.
And as we're speaking, a live look again at the Capitol where the State of the Union address is set to get underway in about 10 minutes. Jill Biden walked in, the vice president's wife. We see a line of people entering the chamber. Doris, what is your sense of what President Obama wants to accomplish in these last 2 years? You spent some time up here in Washington. I know that you've spent a lot of time in the White House with the president. What is your sense?
I think he cares a lot about what he leaves behind to the next successor and the successors after them. So my guess is that making some more progress on immigration, which will be key to him, climate control, something he cares passionately about, preserving Obamacare from being undone by the Republican Congress, if he can do that, and hoping that the recovery will show that the actions that he took with the stimulus and the various things he did really did create a recovering economy. But still, that deep goal, which was the goal when he first came, to do something about rising inequality and middle-class values, something that's bedeviled us for 3 decades now, is the very thing I think at the center of his hope, that if you work hard, you're going to get a fair deal. And that still remains to be seen whether he can do that much about it in the next 2 years.
All right, Doris Kearns Goodwin, a Pulitzer Prize winning biographer and presidential historian. Thank you so much for joining us.
Very welcome.